that I think travel's a beautiful thing. I think sending people abroad is how you start to build bridges in this world, and seeing people who aren't like you and seeing people who are from totally different backgrounds than you are, that's important. And so if I can facilitate people going out and doing that, I think in that sense, it gives the world a sense of harmony.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Have a Map. I am Phoebe Vanica, your host, and with me is the lovely
Erin Springer, and I'm a former Dimevents intern, and our guest today is
Peter Cates.
Yay! Hello, guys. It's lovely to see you all.
Nice to be here.
So I thought we could keep it casual today. As you may have noticed, we're all fairly new at this. I think Erin's been doing this more than anyone, so she can correct us if we're going wrong anywhere. But as we're all kind of new, I thought we should go into it more relaxed and just talk about where we're from to start with. So Peter, if you'd like to start us off, where are you from?
Great. So I'm originally from East Tennessee. Grew up there, went to the University of Tennessee, so I stayed there for a long time. Now I live in Brooklyn, New York. I've been here for almost 4 years.
Wow, and do you enjoy it there?
I love it. Oh my gosh, New York's the best, and kind of the goal was always to get here, so I'm excited to be here.
Ooh, you've reached your goal. There's so much to unpack there. That's so good.
Absolutely.
That's lovely. Okay. And Erin, whereabouts are you from?
So I'm from Connecticut, and I just graduated from the University of South Carolina. So I'm currently in South Carolina, but I'm actually in the midst of packing up my house, and I'm about to drive back up to Connecticut.
Wow, okay. So you're busy now. You're very busy.
Yeah, this is just like in the middle of all my craziness right now.
I know how that feels. Yeah, I think everyone in this after university or school, kind of life, we're all moving, we're all very busy. It can be exhausting. So we've got to make sure we take care of each other.
Yeah. And Phoebe, where are you from?
I am from Great Britain, Portsmouth, right at the bottom. I don't know if any of you know where that is. It's opposite the Isle of Wight, if that helps. Famous for ships and the Navy and such. And I'm still in Great Britain, so there we go. I've just left university, like I say, studying politics, which I enjoyed very much, and now I have a wonderful internship at Dimevents, so we'll see where things go. Let's go back to Peter then, and I really like that you say you had a dream and now you're there and you've reached it, and it was New York and it was living this life that you've got right now. Do you want to go into how you got there at all, just from, being from Tennessee?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee. So it's kind of a smaller, mid-sized city. But when I was 10 years old, my dad took me to New York City, and I went to a Yankees game and walked in Central Park and saw a Broadway show. And I was like, oh man, this is it. That's where I want to live. So I knew the goal, like, for the 12 years after that was like ultimately to get back to New York. It was kind of, I always say New York was my first love. Like when I was 10 years old, it was just like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine wanting to be any other place. And then to get here, it was like that, exactly what you're saying, like the dream came together.
And you've made it sound so easy as well. Like you've just walked into it almost, but I'm sure it must have been difficult along the way.
Yeah, well, I applied to 63 jobs in New York. I said, I'm getting there no matter what. So it was kind of uncompromising.
How long have you been in New York?
Just about 3.5 years. I graduated in 2018, but that year I was kind of back and forth. So, if you count all the time I've been here, it's about 4 years, but just over 3 years straight since graduating.
And you're not getting sick of it at all? I mean, I know some people think cities, London, New York, you can only do for about 18 months, but you're still completely in love with it.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Is the easy answer to that question. I love New York. But, I think you have to kind of find, it's like a lot of places, you have to find your niche and figure out what works for you. So I bounced around neighborhoods a little while. I think it's pretty similar to a lot of big cities that neighborhoods kind of drive the culture, right? So I found, it took me a couple of years, but I kind of found my right fit. So I'm right in central Brooklyn, right next to Prospect Park. I spend all my time outside. And a lot of people think of like New York City, they're like, oh, it's all buildings, like you never get any outside time. It's like, I don't know. I spend more time outside than I ever did in Tennessee, which is kind of a funny, unexpected part of moving here. rain, shine, cold, hot, whatever it is, I'm walking and I'm going to be outside at least for some period of time. So it kind of makes you feel more connected to the weather, and you have to kind of be interacting with it all of the time.
It's interesting that you're so connected with the environment where you are. I wouldn't have expected that from someone in New York or in any kind of big city like that.
Right. Well, it's one of those surprising things that made me love the city even more. And actually, the area I live in, because people forget, it's easy to think of New York as just Manhattan, but Brooklyn is huge, and in Queens you have great beaches. So we drive to the beach on the weekends, and it's like a 30-minute drive. And then the access to parks and all, but then you have the parts of the city that are great too. Art museums and the best music and culture and food and all of that is just right here. So it does feel like I have the world at my fingertips a little bit.
Well, tell us about how you got there. I mean, in stages from after high school. What was your path leading from there?
When I graduated high school, gosh, feels like forever ago. It was only like 8 years ago. Thinking about kind of what my next moves were, it started just to make more and more sense to choose the University of Tennessee. And that was based on, things like financial aid and being close to my family, who I'm really close with, and they all still live in East Tennessee, and knowing that I could use it as a springboard to eventually get to a different place if that's where I wanted to be. And I thought really after college, I would go straight into grad school. So I kind of thought, a writing degree, great skills, but not necessarily an immediate job path. By the time I was graduating college, I just realized like, I need some time. I want to be in New York. Grad school will still be there down the road if that's what I choose to do. So yeah, so I moved to New York after that, applied to those 63 jobs. I was applying mostly to editing, writing jobs. Because that was what my exposure was. And then my mom, actually, she was like, well, you love travel. Why not apply to some travel companies? Which is something that, I kind of thought, how do you even get into that? And it's one of the many industries that feel kind of like a mystery. Like, how do you get a job where you get to talk about travel all day? So the travel aspect is something I'd been doing since I was pretty young. I had some exposure to it. I had a middle school geography teacher put together like a Europe trip, and you applied for it. And if you got in, then you got to go. And then part of it was you had this elective class once a week where you kind of learned how to book travel, right? And like, how do you plan an itinerary? How do you choose an accommodation? How do you even, you have to figure out how you get on this train from this place. So that was my first big trip abroad. I was 13 years old. And then, so by the time I graduated college, it was such a passion for me. I spent every summer doing it. I'd been to, I guess, about 25 countries at that point.
Wow, right. That's really impressive. And not a lot of people have that experience at such a young age as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the exposure was, I feel so lucky to have had. I've actually reached back out to that teacher and said, wow, you really changed my life with this. So, but yeah, it was an exposure at a young age that also empowered me and equipped me to be able to go through kind of my high school and college years and keep traveling. So out of those 25 countries, I was alone for over half of them, and I planned the trip for at least 18, 19 of them. So I really felt like even though I was this poor college student, like backpacking through Europe and, Northern Africa and a few other areas, I kind of learned, even if you don't know necessarily like what are the nicest 5-star hotels and where would I put like a luxury client, or how do I book a limo service, or whatever all those things are, I still understood how to book travel, and ultimately kind of had those skills, which that's what became my career. So my writing degree was really useful in that it gave me the ability to articulate the things I wanted to say, and to be able to write well enough that I could present things well. But the content of my job actually comes from the passion that I was doing on the side, which is travel.
Right, exactly. So it's something you discovered through experience and through following your instincts rather than anything you could be taught. I think that's really interesting and impressive as well, of course.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I'll add to exactly what you're saying, which is it ended up becoming such a natural path. It wasn't anything I had to, I want to be this, so I'm going to force becoming this. It was, I've had some exposure to travel. This is this thing I love. And I just kept doing it. And then it kind of naturally made a career out of it.
And of course, your mother's help I mean, where would we be without them?
Gotta give my mom lots of credit for that one.
Always, yeah. And it is wonderful that you mentioned how lucky you are, because I know a lot of people just wouldn't have any of those opportunities. But when you are given something, a chance like that, just to grab it, grab the bull by the horns, as they say, and take full advantage of it, and then learn off your own back as you go, is a really great skill to have. So developing that, I think, would be great advice to anyone interested.
I'm picturing this moment. I was working in London for a summer during college, and my housing fell through the day I arrived. So I got there, I had all of my bags.
Man.
I turned on my phone from the flight to an email saying, you can't stay here anymore. And so it was like this moment of like, what am I going to do? So I called my new boss. I ended up sleeping on a coworker's couch for a few days and then found a place to live. And there was this real moment. I was 19 years old. And there was this real moment of like, oh, I can do this. Like, no matter what is thrown at me, I can figure this out. And I felt so empowered and so able. And then when I started planning trips to more exotic places, I specialize in Southeast Asia at work. So I spend a lot of time there. So going to Laos or Vietnam or Myanmar and being able to say, okay, if something goes wrong, I know that I'm capable enough to figure out a solution to it. So you have to have those moments. I think everyone does in their career, where you kind of learn to trust yourself and believe
Absolutely.
that you're able to handle it.
Absolutely. And learning to trust yourself is such a valuable skill, an asset throughout life as well, not just necessarily a career, but this is, when you leave school and you think, oh my God, this is life now. This is what I'm going to be doing. It's not, because in this day and age, it's not just a 9 to 5 that we're working. It's so much more than that, because it's so much more interconnected as well with everything. So really, like you say, following your instincts and being at one with yourself and having that self-confidence is an all-rounder, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's how you become this full, more satisfied and realized person, I think. Beyond, of course, like you're saying, beyond just a career.
Yeah, and I think definitely traveling by yourself too, you really like learn more about yourself and like how to do things and become more independent. Because I've done some solo travel. I studied abroad, and so when I was abroad, I did a lot of trips with some friends, but there are some places I wanted to go by myself, so I kind of just went. And like a lot of people were like nervous for me, but honestly, I feel like I did it all safe, and I just really learned a lot about myself, kind of being alone, doing exactly what I wanted to do, and it's like really just taught me a lot. And like before I went abroad, that's when I started my love of travel. But after going abroad, I really just like fell in love with traveling. So
that's so great to hear. Where did you study abroad?
Florence, Italy.
Okay.
Great. And I went in 2019. So I went my sophomore year, which most people don't do. But I think it's the best thing I could have ever done for myself, because 2020, the pandemic hit, and that's when most people go abroad. So I was lucky enough to have my full semester abroad, because a lot of my friends, I had to come home so early, and I feel really bad that they missed out on that opportunity.
Yeah, COVID, I think for travel has just been really sad in a lot of ways. I like you're talking about, I love travel. It's my biggest passion, and to be so limited for the last year, it does feel like I got kind of cut off at the legs there. But no, I'm so glad you got that opportunity to do that in Italy.
Yeah. Can you tell us more about what you exactly do for your job?
Sure. So I guess that's where I kind of left off in the story. I got contacted back from this company. The company I work for is called Artisans of Leisure. So it's a really small company. There's only about 12 people in the New York office. So it's very, very intimate. So I had the founder and CEO message me and said, we saw your resume. We'd like to do an interview. And at that point, I was spending the summer abroad. I was in Morocco. We did a Skype interview while I was there, and she offered me the job that night, and then the rest kind of just feels like history. So I started with the company. We're a tour operator, which is a little different than like a travel agency, which is the main thing people usually think about in the travel industry. So a tour operator, what you're going to do kind of at whatever level, you put together a package tour. So that's going to include transport, accommodation, and then some sort of guiding services and activities. So we do that at a really high level. So everything we do is completely privatized. And so we're working with top guides, top vehicle companies, top everything in the top hotels in the world. And so I was really nervous going in. I had never even been inside of a 5-star hotel, and to go and work for a company that puts together these packages, and especially at such a high level, highly curated, personalized type thing. So that's what my company does. A lot of our clients are travel agents working on behalf of their clients. So we're kind of the next step in the process. And then we'll put together a total package deal and then sell it as like a retail product of like one item that you pay for through us. So that's kind of what we do. My day-to-day, there's a few parts of my job. I was hired in as an operations associate. So operations in the travel industry means booking times. So, you know, what time are they going to get picked up? How long do they have with the driver? Make sure that there's a water bottle in the car. When they get to the place, make sure they can go to the front of the line and get in right away. We don't want them waiting places. And so stuff like that. So operations on that end, we're doing a lot of those kind of nitty gritty. What time do they show up? And that way the client doesn't have to think about any of that. And they get to kind of enjoy the experience. So that's kind of probably the main part of my job. And I spend most of my time going through our itineraries, making sure that it's a one-to-one match on what we have booked and what we've promised our clients. And then the two other kind of aspects of my job are I do sales. I work directly with clients sometimes. So because I'm fairly young in the company, I'm still working. That's kind of what I'm working up into. So you have a lead salesperson speak with a client, and that's when you're actually talking about, here are your options. Here's how we design what you're going to do. And then the other side, which is really, it's all very attached. So we work really collaboratively, which is great. But the other side of it is product development. So that's designing sample tours, giving an idea to our clients of what that's going to look like, promoting our materials, and putting together kind of cohesive structures of trips. And then discovering new countries, becoming experts in places. So, you know, I travel for work to be able to, I'll stay at a different hotel every night and I'll see 3 other hotels, because we don't just want a great hotel, we want the best. So you have to kind of know how each of them work, or figuring out, oh, this is how this train system actually functions, because you can read about it online, but when you're sitting there and you're in the room, we need to be able to give our clients something as streamlined as possible. And so, yeah, that's what kind of the product development side is. So I do a little bit of all of that. And like I said, being on such a small team, you know, I work 10 feet away from our founder and CEO, who's one of the leaders in the travel industry. So I get to talk to her every day. So like yesterday, even I do Argentina. I know the country pretty well. So she's working on this like major Argentina booking, and all day she and I were just sitting down going through, here's the hotel availability. Here's a good way to structure it. Here's how you get from place to place in the most logical sense for, you know, they like hiking. So here are the hiking things they can do and stuff like that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I just think it's amazing how like your passion really is just like what helped you get it, because you were literally like abroad when you got offered a full-time position, which is just amazing in general.
You know, what's so cool is, you know, it was less about just knowing one country or knowing where I've been or something like that. And it was more about being able to just speak with passion and interest about places, because people want to go somewhere that the person they're talking to is excited about. So funnily enough, in my interview, she didn't ask me to describe any of my international trips. She had me sell her my hometown, and just talk about what my experiences were there and why I would send someone there. So it was the communication skills that carried me into the job, which is what I learned from my degree, oddly enough, but the actual content of my job is focused more on that passion side, like you're saying.
Wow. And it's so amazing that you fell into that position that you seem to, well, you've always sort of loved. Was it an obvious path for you to go down, this kind of career of travel? Was it something that clicked in your mind, or did you always have a focus on this kind of direction?
The answer is so no. Like, I did not know that I was going to go into travel, and I didn't have it as like even a goal. It wasn't even on my radar. I guess I kind of thought like, oh, you're either
yeah.
If you work in travel, you're a travel agent, and I didn't want to be a travel agent because that kind of felt like making cold calls to people and trying to get people to book a flight through me or something.
It's got a ring to it, doesn't it? Like, you're a banker. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a travel agent. Or I'm in sales. Oh, okay. You can't go to your high school reunion proudly.
Absolutely. And, everyone makes a path and finds joy and sets up whatever it is that works for them. And I want people to do that. And so, if someone out there is listening and wants to be a travel agent, go be a travel agent. You'll do a great job, I'm sure. But it wasn't the fit for me and what I was trying to do. But to learn that the industry was a lot more than what I thought it was, to learn that it was bigger, that's when I started being able to actually see myself fit into it. And I didn't learn that until I was looking at jobs. It was unexpected how much I learned in the job searching process, even compared to what I learned in the job or at school.
Yeah, and I think that's something that not a lot of people talk about enough. The actual process from education into the workplace and then into a career from that as well. So was it LinkedIn and Indeed or specific websites you were looking at, or did you just see a flyer on the JD Sports window? What specifically were you looking out for?
Gosh, you spend so many hours doing it, and you look at every Monster, Indeed, all of it, right? You're going through LinkedIn. So you also have to kind of figure out what your strengths are. So I realized that I'm not necessarily a media person. So I don't really know necessarily how to create like a LinkedIn profile that stands out and how to maximize their algorithm and stuff like that. So I found that I actually didn't have much success on LinkedIn, but so many of my friends killed it on LinkedIn. So, there's no one path. My job I found on Indeed. Yeah. So it was just, I think what matters is whatever avenue you're going through is when you find a company that excites you, it's not just applying right away. It's taking some time, taking a few hours to go through their website, understanding what they're about, how they work, who their competitors are. And what you end up finding is when you compare someone to their competitors, or when you do, kind of figure out how an industry works, you can start seeing the fine differences. So I chose to apply for the company that I did because the other companies weren't as small, weren't as tight-knit, weren't as collaborative. And something I was really focused on, and I think every bright young person should be focused on, is growth. So that was something I was looking for, is where's somewhere that I won't just be filing papers, I'll actually be kind of in the nitty gritty of the details of the work. And Artisans of Leisure absolutely was it was such a great first step for my career, because I was working alongside people who've been in the industry for a really long time.
I was just gonna say, I feel the same way, where when I first started applying to jobs, I probably started in February or March before I graduated. And it was more of I wasn't really paying a lot of attention. It was more just kind of just to get my resume out there. But now I'm more as I look through more jobs, I'm fine tuning more what I want, spending my time actually paying attention, making sure I look at the details, all of that. Cause now I'm I know more what I want and what to actually look for than just to be oh, I'll take anything. Cause I'd rather start in a career that I actually want to be in.
Right. And you have time. I think something, especially when everyone's graduating college, you hear your friends getting these amazing jobs or into these great grad programs, and you're like, oh my God, I'm behind. I need to catch up. But then you get in the job and you're like, oh, wait, I'm 22. No one is expecting me to be able to carry this team on my back. This is a learning process. And your first few years of work are going to feel, I think, more like an extension of, university than they feel like you're necessarily have your hands around the job. I think most people agree it takes 6 months to a year before you really feel like you're contributing more than you're taking.
Yeah, and I think a certain degree of patience with the process as well, because it's a full-on job in itself, I find, sometimes, with all the different hoops you have to jump through just for the one company. And if you're somebody who, like yourself, is applying for 63, just in the one area, before you've even had a look at anywhere else in America or, the world, it takes a really long time. So I think patience is important there. Yeah, what you've said.
I think I'll jump in and add, I applied to 63 companies. The first 60 I applied to were for editing and writing jobs, because that's what my degree was in. So that's what I thought I could do. And then it was right at the end that I stuck in. I only applied to 2 travel jobs, and I ended up getting interviews for both. And it was like, I didn't even get an well, that's not true. I got almost no response at all from most of the publications I was applying to. And then when I found the right fit for me, it became so, they were like, yeah, we want you. This is clearly what you should be doing. So it's funny. I wasted so much of, not wasted, I used so much of my time focusing on what I thought my path had to be. And then it turns out that the actual path that was the best fit for me ended up being so natural, it felt natural.
Yeah, and that's some great advice to anyone listening, I think. If it's not happening naturally, don't work yourself up over it. Because I know some people can get really anxious over that kind of thing, especially in the world we live in today. There's so much to stress about and so many other things. Taking care of yourself it should be a priority, really. And if something's not natural, then it doesn't need to be forced. And yeah, there's plenty of other fish in the sea. You know, there's so much out there in this big wide world, as we all know, being travelers.
Right. You know, a kind of a philosophy I live by is like, have a plan, but don't be obsessed with it. So I like to kind of know what my next steps are, but knowing that it changes and it's going to, I like being in a direction, and it's a lot easier to kind of adjust your direction if you're going forward. But if you're just waiting for something to hit you, I don't think that happens. I'm sure it happens to someone, but it's not going to happen to most people.
You could even say, cough, cough, you need to have a map.
Yeah. Oh, hey.
Hey, I made it
Full
happen.
circle.
There we go. Had to get it in there. So, okay, as we're moving along in your journey then, what would you say you enjoy most about the impact that you're making in your career or in the world even? Is there anything that you're really proud of, any moments or anything that you're looking forward to?
Yes, I have so many answers to this. And I think it's important just to preface it. It's important to have a mission, a sense of why am I doing this? Because if it's just for yourself, I think you're going to, that can't sustain you through it all. So there has to be a sense of like, what am I contributing that's like beyond just me? So I'll say 2 things. One of them is kind of ethereal and very like flowery, but that is that I think travel is a beautiful thing. I think sending people abroad is how you start to build bridges in this world, and seeing people who aren't like you and seeing people who are from totally different backgrounds than you are, that's important. And so if I can facilitate people going out and doing that, I think in that sense, it gives the world a sense of harmony. There's a real community for it. People want to support other travelers, even just connecting with other world travelers and being able to say, you know, couch surfing and like couchsurfing.com, if you haven't tried that. It's like staying with someone for free who then kind of it's expected that it's going to be reciprocal when they come to New York, right?
I haven't heard of that one. And as a young woman, it sounds very scary. But obviously you've got to take some kind of risk in this life, you know, if you want to get anywhere. But I think I will try that. That sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's fun, you know, and there's a community for it, and you know, people are background checks, and you can stay with other women and that kind of thing, which is not to minimize the fear of traveling as a woman, but I definitely, that's a big advantage I had growing up, being able to go as like a 17-year-old kid and having a sense of safety, because you know, just being around the world as a man can be a little easier.
It can, but I think it's important. I mean, personally, I'm a feminist myself, but I think it's important to let other people know that you're not going to be making yourself smaller for any kind of space. Like globally as well, that's an important message to send just in who you are as a person. So I think it's really great to reassure people, don't limit yourself on who you happen to be, who you happen to be born as or choose to be in this life. You know, don't make any kind of limitations for yourself, because the world is going to be doing that for you. So it's really great to be able to know that there's a network and a community out there who love something just as much as you do and will be there for you if you need it.
I love that so much. As you know, I'm a queer person, so as like a young queer person, that's something I think about when I travel, is like, what does that visibility look like? And I love what you said about like, you know, the world is going to create enough barriers for you. You don't need to create them for yourself. That's a great mentality.
Yeah, I definitely think like just like there are limitations to traveling for everyone, and like I think you just have to know it and just be careful, but like don't let it stop you from doing what you love. Like it's definitely everywhere you go there will be something standing in the way, but like if you're really passionate about it, there you can work through it in some way.
And I think I absolutely agree, but I think there's the other side of it where that's the point of travel, to go to different places and meet different people and new cultures and experiences. So it is going to be different and scary and hard, but that's why you're in it as well.
What a fantastic, beautiful summary of what the joy of travel is. That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
I'll add back onto kind of the second point of the mission that's a little bit more like solid is how much the global economy relies on travel, right?
Yeah.
And it's not just like airlines and cruise ships and these like mega corporations, but it's every restaurant owner, every shop owner, everybody who drives your car and who does things when you're traveling. Those people's livelihoods depend on it. And I was reading a New York Times piece with COVID happening that over 60% of the global economy relies on international travel, either directly or indirectly. And it's so important that we foster that and that we actually encourage that in countries that people don't necessarily view as like a major tourist destination. And so working in Southeast Asia, which is going to be some of the poorer countries in the world, a few of them, some of them do quite well, but in some of the countries I work in, there's real poverty, and having someone come in and spend thousands of dollars at restaurants and shops and art galleries and at the tourist sites that they go to that then employ people, you feel like you're doing something good. You know that you're making money work for people who are around the world and who need it.
I think that's really important to know. I think that's a really great message you've got out there, because a lot of people do just assume that it's airlines and cruise ships, and then along with that is the association of the mega giants that can control that, or the pollution that comes along with it. And there's so many other people involved that are just completely overlooked. So really remembering that a person does need you to go somewhere, or be there for them and enjoy yourself through their culture and through their life is a lovely message, I think, to remind people of.
Right. Yeah. So facilitating people getting to experience good culture and then also being able to like support a global economy, to me, those give me a mission, and it allows me to kind of have that, having a bad day or something, it gives me something beyond myself to focus on.
Wow. Yeah, that's really special. Wow, that's lovely. Okay.
What is like the favorite like country you've been to, or maybe your like favorite culture, or just like something that like really stands out to you from traveling?
I love Thailand. It is all of Southeast Asia is just beautiful landscapes, and the culture, the people are so warm and kind. And then I love food. So for me, Thai food is like incredible. I've had some of the best experiences ever, the most beautiful beaches I've ever seen. The interaction with kind of a different religion than I was ever exposed to growing up in America. And so getting to see all of that and take part in it, that cultural exchange, it felt especially great in Thailand. They also are known for having some of the best hotels in the world. So doing it through my company and with the people I work with, I got to stay in some pretty amazing places too. So that was probably like the best experience I've ever had. I love Argentina. I think that kind of South American culture is so rich, so passionate. So again, great food. I could talk about food all the time. And then for me, I'm outdoor focused. So it's always about kind of the natural wonders I get to see. So in Argentina, that's like Iguazu Falls, like the series of waterfalls on the border with Brazil, or going down and hiking in Patagonia. That was really amazing. I did some hiking in Morocco. I've gone dog sledding in Canada. I've done hot air balloon rides in Myanmar. I mean, I could just go on and on. Just these kind of the outdoor adventure, that side of it is what really lights me up. So any country that has things to offer in that department. I've big trip coming up for Iceland now that Europe is starting to open up for us. So in August, I'm trekking in Iceland for 2 weeks, which I'm really excited about.
So would you say in this perfect life that you've got for yourself, and that you've seemed to have gotten to, not effortlessly, but I mean, you've gotten here at least this point, would you say there's anything you would have done differently in the past, or maybe you're considering to do differently in the future? Over the next 5 years, would you change anything significantly?
Everything I achieved was on the shoulders of the people who supported me. So that means my parents, the professors I had, every friendship I had that was encouraging me to go and do more, every person I met while I was traveling who helped me out a little bit. To first acknowledge all of the people who got me here is important. So with that said, I don't know that I would change much. I'm focusing on just trying to do right by the people who invested in me. And I love where I ended up. So yeah, there are things that my life wasn't always so wonderful in the process. But honestly, I guess if I would change something, it would just be travel more. I wish I'd taken one more trip or one more thing while I had the opportunity to. And I think it's good to remember that the way we do things changes, right? So just because at one point I was backpacking and staying in hostels and sleeping on people's couches, even though that's not something I want to do anymore, it's not because those things aren't good, or that it's just because I changed and I grew, and now different kinds of travel suit me better. And I think what's great is the world is open to whatever position you're in. If you have lots of money and you want to go stay in the nicest places, you can do that. And if you were poor like me and wanted to just like bum around and get places, you can do that too. You might ride more buses than the rich people do, but if you're okay with that, it's all about kind of figuring out what works for you.
Is there any advice you'd give to your younger self, or is there anything you might change if you were to be able to talk to yourself from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe you in high school?
It sounds super cliche, but stop comparing. Your life looks different than other people's, and the degree to which you achieve prestige or money or whatever, you just have to figure out what all of that looks like best for you. And if you spend too much time looking back and forth at what other people are doing, it clouds up the voice in your head that's giving you your own direction. So comparison is the thief of joy, for sure. So that means just like be excited for other people who are achieving great things and celebrate them, and then they celebrate you. That's a great way to do your life. Other advice would be, if you have things you're passionate about or interested in, just do it. There's never going to be a perfect time. There's never going to be an opportunity probably that just like is thrown at you and you're given everything you want. You have to just go out and try things, make it happen, go for it. And that kind of freedom, it empowers you to keep doing it. So the more success you have. So for instance, I took a pottery class when I was in my freshman year of college, and ended up turning it into a small business. I still do it. It supported me through COVID. It supported me my last 2 years of college. And you just have to roll with the punches, find the things you're interested in. And if you can monetize it, even better.
Wow, that's impressive that you've continued other skills to develop other skills that you enjoy in your spare time as well. So don't just stop with that one passion you have, even though it's exactly what you want and it's making you money. Don't just stop there. Keep pushing yourself and expanding, and it's okay to take your time with it. Yeah, that's really lovely.
And it's also okay to have things you don't monetize. So like join your kickball league or whatever it is and figure out how to enjoy your life, right?
Yeah, it's the little things that make life. And if you can just keep doing those little things that make you happy, then I mean, that's very important, and it's a great thing to be able to do in your life. We're very lucky to have that, I think.
And I think our generation has an awareness of that I think before it seemed like, I don't know, people would like work to live. And now there's a real sense of like, what are you passionate about? What do you want to spend your days doing? And I think that kind of transition for our generation, we're really lucky that's a mentality shared by most people our age, which is, I don't just want to go to my 9-to-5 job or go to my really tough job so that I can make money to then do the things I enjoy. It's like, if you can actually enjoy the things you're doing all day, then it's less important about how much you're making off of it.
Yeah, I would like to think it was a generational thing, and it's something that not for the sake of bitterness, but it's just so that in the future, the people that are going to grow up in 10 years time, I have younger sisters, 10 years younger than me, and it's really nice to think that when they're my age, they'll have even more opportunities. And that's exactly what other generations have always worked towards. The people that they're bringing up will have even more. So I think it's really lucky that we're able to see the fruit of their labor, and privileged to recognize it as well. So
yeah.
So I think we're coming to a close. Does anyone have anything else to say to anyone listening? Any advice or any questions that we'd like to ask each other?
I have one thing I'd really like to add. I don't know if it fits perfectly right here, but something I think it's important to say is the main part of your job is just never going to be the coolest part. I get to travel. I get to talk about my passion and love for different countries. But the main thing I do all day, every day is read itineraries, check times, do really detailed work to sift through exactly which bus transfer they need to make to do whatever thing. And it's not always going to be as sexy and glamorous as it sounds like it should be, right? So embracing that any job contains a good amount of the mundane, and any job, especially when you're new and starting out, you're going to do a lot of the busy work. You're going to do a lot of the crappy work that no one else in the office wants to do because you're new and you have superiors. And embracing that as a part of the process, kind of, we were talking earlier about patience with the process. I think that's a really important part that I want to get out there. I love my job, but I do spend a lot of time reading contracts. Well, the best skill you can bring to a job is consistency. That means, showing up, doing the things you're going to say you're going to do, and doing it every time. And even if a big part of my job is filling in forms, right? I make documents for our clients, for instance. It matters that I spell their name right every time. And even though that's the easiest part of my job, I have to do it every day over and over again. And if I mess that up, then we've already lost confidence, or we've already, I'm going to let down the reputation that my company has for getting every detail right. And so it's about taking every job seriously, no matter how small, and being consistent. And that's how you move up. That's where you're going to start getting bigger and bigger responsibilities. There is nothing that doesn't matter when you're presenting clients with information. So it has to look good every time. And you have to care about those things. And if you can't make yourself care about how to spell your client's name, you're going to have to figure out how to, because it just matters. And it, like I said, it's probably, I do it 100 times a day. Everyone has weaknesses. Everyone messes something up, and that just happens. But working with people who are focused on collaboration and focused on, there's some environments that are more competitive than collaborative. And if you're in a competitive environment, they're not going to help you out if you're having trouble with, check the document, make sure that this is spelled right, that kind of thing. But when my office, and I could not speak highly enough about my coworkers, which is everything is focused on how do we support each other. So we don't really do anything that doesn't get looked at by at least 2 people. So being in an environment, it's setting yourself up for success to be in an environment that's collaborative. And I think that can overcome most disadvantages.
Yeah, that's nice to hear, because a lot of people do say that the workplace is competitive, or the jobs market as a whole is very competitive just in its nature. So to hear the message earlier, traveling, it's a community. And then in other ways, in the job place, there's also places where it can be a community, and there are stages of life where you will be able to relax about certain things and having a certain mindset. It's very nice to hear that.
Yeah, I think it's probably very industry specific. What's great is when you're working in the travel industry, you're surrounded by other people who have the same mentality and mission as you. And so the cooperation is built into my industry. And I think that's true for industries like it.
Yeah, whereas you wouldn't find that in a courtroom or a law firm, for example. That's kind of who I'm comparing it against. But
sure, and I'm sure there are very collaborative law firms, and I'm sure there's very competitive travel companies. But again, those are the questions when you're in an interview, right? You're both kind of going into the job world, right? So you're going to be doing lots of interviews very soon. When you're in an interview, they will always ask what your questions you have for them, and it's a great opportunity to find out the two things I would prioritize is kind of understanding that collaboration versus competitive nature of where you're applying to, as well as figuring out what's the growth opportunity, knowing that you can actually make a 5-year plan at that company and it's not just a stepping stone to something else.
Right, like making sure it's a good fit for you as much as it is for them, because you're going to be part of it and it's going to be just as much a part of your life as you are to them. I've kind of said that.
On that first job, it does feel a little bit like you're begging for an opportunity, but you quickly realize like, oh, they hired me because I'm a great candidate. I need to figure out, do I want to work here? And most employers are going to really view it that way too, as it's a two-way street.
Would you recommend people going into internships to try out certain industries? Obviously, you found that travel just worked for you and you clicked with it, but would you say to anyone who's not too sure internships are very valuable for that industry, for that demographic?
Wow, yeah. Internships vary so much. Some you're going to have no responsibilities and make no money. And part of that is just seeing how an office works and understanding that. And I think there's value there, but it's really what you want to get out of it. So I would focus on getting an internship or working for a company that is going to give you opportunities, right? Where you're actually going to get your hands around a little bit of work. And the interns are never, I don't know any company where an intern's really going to be on a big project, but getting to kind of be in the room where things are happening, that's the value of an internship in my mind. So yeah, absolutely. I'd recommend internships. And like Dim seems really focused on their interns in a way that I think not all companies are. So being with someone like that, where you're getting like very intentionally fostered or in a program that is like notorious for having like a good like mentorship structure, that's going to be your most valuable kind of internship.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. We like to hear that, don't we? Being in the internship ourselves. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
For the travel industry, I would say the best thing you can do is travel. Just get out there, go see things, plan your own trips, learn how to put together an itinerary, learn how to choose a hotel, there's no better way to learn how to do it than to do it.
Right. Practical experience, not necessarily networking, but meeting people. And growing in yourself as an independent person. I think that's been a very strong theme throughout this podcast, actually.
I love that that's the message I've gotten across. That would be my number one. That's perfect.
Oh, absolutely. Loud and clear. All righty. I think we've given them enough. I hope so. We'll wrap up. Oh, if this is a little break, we'll wrap up and then I'll stop recording. Yeah. Does that sound good?
Great.
Okay. Erin, do they have any specific outro? Is it just thank you for listening?
I think it's just Peter, if you want to like say if you have like your Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever, if you want people to like connect with you who are watching, you can like plug that if you want.
Sure. Yeah, I'll do that now.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. So would you like me to introduce you or?
Sure, that'd be great.
Yep, okay. And Peter, if you'd like to plug anything of your own or get the message out there about anything you'd like to, now's your chance. Go for it.
I would say, find me on Instagram or LinkedIn. It's Peter Cates. Instagram, it's Peter_Cates. Pretty easy to get to. It's CATES. If you're trying to find me there, LinkedIn, it's the same thing. That should be easy to find me if you want to connect. My company is Artisans of Leisure. You can find artisansofleisure.com. You can find all of our tours and take a look at my other fantastic colleagues that I work with every day. So anyone who's interested, please reach out. I'm accessible on all of those platforms.
Very good, very good. I can only hear it, Artisans as leisure. Leisure, like so fancy at the end. When people say they go to the theatre, it's like a leisure.
Right. Yeah. We have to be, you know how an industry is. It's all about branding, right? So
exactly.
gotta brand ourselves. Right.
There we go. Presentation. Very important. Wherever you go, actually, it is, isn't it?
100%.
It shows that you care. All right. Well, thank you for listening to Have a Map by Dimevents. And we'll see you on the next one. This has been Phoebe Vanica,
Erin Springer,
and Peter Cates. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. It was a wonder.
Thank you.
You're so lovely. You're such a lovely person. I'm delighted
Thank you.
that we got to talk.
Yeah, it was so good to get to like know more about the travel industry in general.
Yeah, likewise, it was great to meet both of you.
Oh, thank you very much. It's been so informative as well. And I think a real reassurance to people that might be listening and thinking, oh, wow, if he's done it, I have a chance too. I can get there. It doesn't have to be that hard.
Yes,
Which is exactly what we want. So there we go.